Sunset Claus. Chapter 1. The Proposition. The salty ocean air whipped through Melody Vesper's loose bun as she balanced 3 heavy platters of fish and chips on her arms. The lunch rush at the Salty Anchor was in full chaotic swing, the wooden deck of the Pacific Beach Boardwalk restaurant buzzing with tourists and the relentless crash of waves. "Order up for table 7. The cook barked. "On it, Marty," Melody called back, her voice a calm anchor in the storm. She moved with an efficient grace, delivering food with a warm smile, refilling drinks, and somehow always noticing the little things. The elderly couple who needed extra napkins, the little girl who dropped her crayon. At a secluded table in the corner, a man watched her. Kaelen Rhodes sat in stark contrast to the vibrant, sun-soaked chaos around him. Dressed in a simple but exquisitely tailored charcoal shirt, he was a statue of stillness. He'd chosen this place for a solitary business lunch precisely because no one from his world would ever come here. Yet he couldn't look away from the waitress. He saw the way she deftly sidestepped a drunk patron's groping hand with a firm, "I'll bring your check now, sir," her tone leaving no room for argument. He saw the genuine warmth in her eyes when she knelt to talk to a child. And he saw the flicker of profound weariness when she thought no one was looking, as she tucked her tips into her apron, her lips moving silently, as if calculating a sum. His own world felt suffocatingly present. At a nearby table, a cluster of socialites he vaguely recognized from charity galas were performing what he privately called the mating dance. Their laughter was a little too loud, their glances in his direction a little too calculated. They knew about the clause in his late grandfather's trust, the one that required a year of marriage before he could access the final controlling share of his own company, Axiom Ventures. They saw a prize. He saw a prison. But the waitress, Melody. She looked at him only to take his order. Her eyes, the color of the sea under a cloudy sky, held no agenda, no recognition. They only held a quiet, resilient strength that intrigued him more than any business merger ever had. An hour later, her shift ended. The sun was dipping toward the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. Melody stepped out the back door, shrugging off her apron and pulling a light sweater over her uniform. She leaned against the sun-bleached wood of the building, closing her eyes for a single precious moment of peace. Ms. Vesper. Her eyes flew open. The man from the corner table stood before her, his silhouette sharp against the dying light. Can I help you?" she asked, her guard instantly up. "My name is Kaelen Rhodes." He offered no handshake. His gaze was direct, analytical. "I have a business proposition for you." Melody blinked. "I'm not looking for a new job." "It's not a job." He paused, choosing his words with the precision of a surgeon. "I need to be married for 1 year to fulfill the terms of a trust. The women in my social circle are unsuitable. You are not." A disbelieving laugh escaped her. "You're joking." "I don't joke." His voice was flat, devoid of humor. "In return, you will receive $5 million deposited into an account in your name only upon the termination of the agreement. A fully funded college trust will be established for your daughter, Juniper. And you will receive the seed, capital, and resources to start your own business, the plant nursery you want." The air left Melody's lungs. He knew her daughter's name. He knew her dream. The world seemed to tilt. This wasn't a pickup line. It was a cold, clinical offer. A transaction. "You're insane," she whispered, her voice trembling with a mixture of outrage and shock. "I'm pragmatic," he corrected. "It's a simple exchange. 1 year of your life for a lifetime of security for you and your child. Think about it." He didn't wait for another refusal. He simply turned and walked away, leaving Melody standing in the alley, the neon sign of the Salty Anchor flickering above her, the scent of salt and frying oil suddenly feeling like the bars of a cage she'd never known she was in. We hope you're enjoying this new story of unexpected proposals and new beginnings. If you are, please support our channel by liking this video and subscribing to the Worthington Chronicles for more full-length romance stories. Chapter 2. The Reluctant Agreement. Old Hatchback coughed, sputtered, and died with a final metallic sigh. Melody's forehead dropped against the steering wheel with a soft thud. Of course. This would happen today, after the bizarre encounter with the billionaire. A bitter laugh escaped her. The man's offer, as outrageous as it was, echoed in her mind. She used the last of her phone battery to call a tow truck, the cost of which would decimate this week's grocery budget. The walk home to her small North Park apartment felt longer than ever, the weight of her financial reality of physical pressure on her shoulders. When she opened the door, the sight of her daughter Junie coloring at the kitchen table was a balm to her soul. But the feeling was short-lived. A bright yellow envelope from Junie's school sat beside the crayons, the final notice for the outstanding arts program fee. "Mama, look! I drew a castle!" Junie held up a vibrant picture. "It's beautiful, sweetheart," Melody said, her voice thick as she tucked the envelope away. A castle. Her daughter dreamed of castles while she couldn't even afford the school fees to keep her in an art class. The next day, as if summoned by her despair, he was there. Kaelen Rhodes stood on the worn welcome mat of her apartment building, looking as out of place as a diamond in a discount store. He held a sleek leather portfolio. "We need to talk," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. Feeling cornered, Melody led him up to her small, cluttered apartment. Junie peeked out from her bedroom, her eyes wide with curiosity at the tall, serious stranger. In her sunny, plant-filled living room, Kaelen got straight to the point. He opened the portfolio on her coffee table, revealing a thick, legal document. "This is the formal agreement. I've had my lawyers draft it." Melody crossed her arms. "I told you no. You told me I was insane. I'm here to prove I'm not." He tapped a specific clause. "Let me quantify the offer clearly. Upon the successful, 1-year completion of our platonic marriage, you will receive a lump sum of about $7 million. Tax-free." Melody's breath caught. $7 million. It was an amount that could erase every worry forever. "Additionally," Kaelen continued, his voice cool and precise, "a $2 million trust fund will be established for Juniper, accessible for her education and available to her at age 25. Furthermore, you will receive a $1 million seed investment for your nursery, Vesper's Verdancy, along with a business manager to help you launch it." He slid the document toward her. "The contract includes clauses for your complete protection, separate living quarters, a strict non-physical intimacy clause, a substantial monthly stipend for your personal use during the term, and a confidentiality agreement that protects your and Juniper's privacy." He finally looked up from the papers, his intense gaze pinning her. "This isn't charity, Melody. It's a strategic partnership. I provide the capital and the framework. You provide a solution to my problem. In 1 year, you walk away with the resources to build any life you and your daughter can imagine. The only question is, are you pragmatic enough to accept it?" Melody looked from the life-changing numbers on the page to her daughter's bedroom door. She saw a future of constant struggle, of saying no to Junie, of dreams perpetually deferred. Then she saw a life of security, of possibility, of yes. Her hands trembled as she picked up the pen. It felt like selling a part of herself. But for Junie's future, for the chance to give her roots and wings, she would do it. "For 1 year," she whispered, her voice barely audible. 1 year, Kaelen confirmed. She signed her name. The ink was still wet when she felt the first tear trace a path down her cheek. She had just traded a year of her life for a lifetime of security, and the weight of that choice settled deep in her bones. Chapter 3. The Gilded Cage. The move to Kaelen's La Jolla estate was a silent, surreal procession. A discreet black SUV collected Melody and Junie, their few boxes of belongings looking lost in the vast interior. As the gates swung open, Junie's small voice broke the silence. "Mama, is this a castle?" It might as well have been. The house was a masterpiece of modern architecture. All sharp angles, gleaming white walls, and floor-to-ceiling glass that showcased the breathtaking Pacific expanse. Inside, it was cool, silent, and sterile. There were no family photos, no scattered toys, no lived-in warmth. It was a museum, and they were the new, awkwardly placed exhibits. A stern, efficient housekeeper showed them to their wing. "Mr. Rhodes's quarters are in the East Wing," she stated, her tone making the separation sound like a law of nature. "You will find everything you need here." Their everything was a suite of beautiful, impersonal rooms. Junie, initially wide-eyed, with wonder soon grew quiet, her footsteps echoing unnaturally in the vast space. Melody felt a profound sense of being an imposter, a temporary resident in a world that would never truly be hers. Their first public appearance was a charity auction at a downtown art gallery. Kaelen, in a tuxedo that cost more than her old car, was the picture of controlled power. Melody wore a rented designer gown that felt like someone else's skin. "Just stay close and smile," Kaelen had instructed, his hand a light professional pressure on her lower back. But Melody, surrey. But Melody, surrounded by the clinking champagne glasses and murmured conversations about investments she didn't understand, felt a surge of rebellious clarity. When a woman draped in diamonds lamented the hardship of finding a reliable yacht crew, Melody couldn't help herself. "I suppose it's a bit like trying to find a good mechanic for a 15-year-old hatchback," she said, her voice sweet but her eyes sharp. "The struggle is real, just on different oceans." The woman blinked, speechless. Kaelen, to her surprise, didn't reprimand her. He simply guided her away, and as they turned, she saw the faintest, most reluctant twitch at the corner of his mouth. Later, back in the oppressive silence of the house, Melody found a small, sunny patch on her private balcony. Unable to bear the sterility any longer, she smuggled a few clay pots and packets of seeds from her old apartment. With Junie's eager help, she began a small, secret container garden of basil, thyme, and rosemary. It was a tiny act of rebellion, a piece of her old, vibrant life transplanted into this gilded cage. A few days later, she found Kaelen standing on her balcony, looking down at the fledgling plants. "I can remove them if it's against the rules," Melody said defensively, stepping out to join him. Kaelen didn't look at her, his gaze fixed on the green shoots. "No," he said, his voice quieter than she'd ever heard it. "Leave them." He reached out, his fingers gently brushing a leaf of basil. "It's the first thing in this house that actually smells like something." In that moment, Melody saw not a cold billionaire, but a man in a beautiful, empty fortress, and she wondered if the cage felt as large and lonely from the inside as it did from where she stood. If you're enjoying this story of two worlds colliding, please support our channel by liking this video and subscribing to the Worthington Chronicles for more full-length romance stories. Chapter 4. Cracks in the Facade. The charity gala at the San Diego Zoo was a whirlwind of lights, music, and exotic scents. Under a canopy of twinkling lights, with the distant roar of big cats providing a primal soundtrack, Kael and Melody played their parts perfectly. He was the attentive, powerful husband. She was the graceful, charming wife. But during a slow dance, the performance began to feel dangerously real. His hand was firm on her back, her body fitting against his with an unsettling rightness. The world narrowed to the space between them, the music fading into a dull hum. "We should mingle," Melody whispered, her voice unsteady. "Right," Kaeli agreed, his own voice rough. But neither moved for a long moment. Later, while escaping the crowd near the tiger enclosure, they found themselves alone in a shadowy grotto. The air was thick with the scent of night-blooming jasmine and raw animal musk. A massive tiger paced nearby, its golden eyes catching the moonlight. "Sometimes I feel like him," Kael murmured, watching the magnificent, trapped creature. "All this power, but no real freedom." Melody turned to him. In the dappled shadows, his features were softer, more vulnerable. "You built this cage for yourself, Kael." "Maybe," he said, his gaze dropping to her lips. "Or maybe I was just waiting for the right person to open the door." The space between them vanished. He didn't kiss her. Not quite. His forehead rested against hers, their breath mingling, the tension so palpable it felt like a third presence. It was more intimate than any kiss could have been, this suspended moment of almost. The next morning, society blogs were filled with photos of them from the gala. In one, taken during their dance, Kael was looking down at Melody with an expression that could only be described as smitten. In another, she was laughing at something he'd said, her hand resting naturally on his arm. They looked, to all the world, like a couple deeply in love. His board was appeased. The circling socialites were furious. The act was working too well, and the line between performance and reality was blurring beyond recognition. Back in the stark silence of the La Jolla house, the memory of that charged moment in the grotto hung between them, as real and untamed as the tiger they'd watched. The carefully constructed walls of their business arrangement were developing cracks, and through them, something wild and unpredictable was beginning to bloom. Chapter 5. The Family. They could be. The change was subtle at first. Kael started coming home earlier, his driver dropping him off just as the late afternoon sun was painting the ocean gold. One such evening, he pushed open the massive front door to a sound he'd never heard in this house before: unfettered, joyous laughter. He followed the sound to the living room, a space usually defined by its minimalist perfection. The scene that greeted him was anything but. A checkered blanket was spread across the imported wool rug, littered with the remains of a picnic, crusts of sandwiches, apple cores, and cookie crumbs. In the center of this happy chaos, Melody and Junie were playing a board game, their laughter echoing off the high ceilings. Junie spotted him first. "Kael, you're home! Come play with us. Mama is winning." Melody looked up, a warm, unguarded smile on her face. "There's room on the blanket, if you dare." For a moment, he hesitated, the part of him that craved order rebelling against the mess. But then he saw the genuine welcome in their eyes. He shrugged off his suit jacket, loosened his tie, and carefully sat on the edge of the blanket. An hour later, he was fully engrossed, explaining the basic logic of a simple coding algorithm to a fascinated Junie, using the game pieces to demonstrate. In return, she was patiently teaching him the names of all the herbs in her mother's secret garden, making him repeat them until he got them right. Later, after Junie was tucked into bed, Kael found Melody on the deck, watching the moonlight dance on the water. He handed her a glass of wine. "Today was nice," he said, the word feeling inadequate. "It was," she agreed, her smile soft. It felt real. They talked then, not as business partners, but as two people slowly shedding their armor. He spoke of his chaotic childhood, the driving need to build something solid and secure. She spoke of her late husband, the grief that had reshaped her, and the fierce love for her daughter that kept her moving forward. The emotional intimacy that blossomed between them in the quiet night was more profound, more terrifying than the physical attraction they'd skirted around. It was the foundation of something that could last, and that was the most dangerous prospect of all. Chapter 6. The past intrudes. The idyllic bubble they had created was shattered by a certified letter. Melody's hands trembled as she read the formal legal language. It was from her late husband's parents, the Carlyles, people who had shown little interest in Junie since their son's death. The letter accused Melody of providing an unstable and morally questionable environment for their granddaughter, citing her reckless and public entanglement with a billionaire of questionable character. They were petitioning for custody. Panic seized Melody, cold and sharp. She felt the ground she had been standing on crumble. Kael found her in the garden, the letter clutched in her hand, tears streaming down her face. "They're going to take her," she choked out. Kael took the letter, his eyes scanning the contents. His expression, usually so controlled, darkened with a cold, swift anger. Without a moment's hesitation, he pulled out his phone. "Eleanor," he said into the phone, his voice clipped and authoritative. "We have a situation. I need the full team on this now. A custody challenge against Melody Vesper. I want it shut down. Permanently." He listened for a moment, then his voice dropped, becoming deadly quiet. "I don't care about the cost. Use everything. Dig into the Carlyles' finances, their history, everything. This ends before it begins." He ended the call and turned to Melody, his gaze intense and unwavering. "They will not touch Junie. Do you understand me? No one is taking your daughter from you." The ferocity of his response, the immediate and total mobilization of his resources, stunned her. This was no longer about their contract. This was personal. He wasn't protecting an asset. He was protecting them. In that moment, as he stood, before her, a fortress against the storm, Melody felt a shift deep within her soul. The last of her walls, built from fear and self-preservation, crumbled to dust. She wasn't just grateful. She was falling in love with the man who was fighting for her world as if it were his own. Chapter 7. The Breaking Point. The victory against the Carlyles was swift and absolute. Kael's legal team uncovered questionable financial dealings and a history of neglect, forcing them to withdraw their petition with a signed agreement to never contest custody again. The relief that washed over Melody was profound, but it was quickly overshadowed by a new threat. Serafina, the most persistent of the socialites from Kael's world, cornered Melody at a boutique in La Jolla. Her smile was sharp enough to cut glass. "Congratulations," Serafina purred, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "You played the game better than any of us. A marriage of convenience to fulfill the trust clause. Who would have thought the waitress would be the most cunning golds? Digger of all?" Melody froze, her blood running cold. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Oh, please," Serafina scoffed. "The 1-year term? The $7 million payout? We all know about Kael's grandfather's trust. You're just the hired help, dear. The most expensive temporary wife in San Diego history." The words landed like physical blows, the exact terms laid bare with malicious precision. Melody felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. She had known it was a business arrangement, but hearing it thrown in her face by this woman made it feel sordid and cheap. She had let herself believe his protectiveness was real, but had it just been about protecting his investment? She fled the boutique, her heart hammering. That night, she confronted Kael in his study, her voice shaking with a mixture of heartbreak and fury. Serafina knew. She knew the exact terms, the amount, everything. Was this all just a transaction? To you? Was protecting Junie just about protecting your asset? "Melody, it's not like that," he began, his voice tight. "Isn't it?" she shot back, tears finally falling. "I can't do this anymore, Kael. I can't live in this gilded cage, pretending, waiting for the clock to run out. I signed up for a business deal, but I can't separate it anymore. The deal is off." She didn't wait for his response. She turned and ran to her room where Junie was sleeping. With trembling hands, she began to pack their bags. The dream was over. The safety was an illusion. She had to get her daughter out before she lost herself completely in a man who saw her as a line item in a contract. Chapter 8. The Grand Gesture. The familiar scent of salt and frying oil greeted Melody like a ghost from her past. The salty anchor was just as chaotic as she remembered, the wooden boards of the boardwalk creaking underfoot. Tying her apron, she fell into the old rhythms, the weight of the last few months a heavy cloak around her shoulders. It was a step back, a surrender, but it was real. Midway through the lunch rush, a hush fell over the deck. Patrons whispered, their eyes darting toward the entrance. Melody looked up, a tray of drinks balanced in her hands, and her breath caught. Kaelen Rhodes stood there, looking utterly out of place in his impeccable suit. But he wasn't looking at the gawking customers. His gaze was fixed solely on her. In his hands, he held no flowers, no jewelry box. He held a simple leather folder and a cardboard tube. He walked toward her, the crowd parting for him. He stopped, at her table, his voice clear and steady, carrying over the crash of the waves. "The contract is void," he announced, placing the leather folder on the table. He then placed the cardboard tube next to it. "And this is the deed to a retail space in Little Italy. It has a sunny back patio, perfect for a nursery." Melody could only stare, her heart pounding in her chest. "The offer was for a business arrangement," Kael continued, his intense gaze softening. "This is a partnership. In life. If you'll have me." He took a step closer, his voice dropping, meant only for her. Melody, I love you. Not because of a contract, but because of your strength, your heart, and the family you made me believe I could have. You and Junie are my home. Tears welled in Melody's eyes, but this time they were tears of hope and overwhelming love. The cage was gone. In its place was a choice, a future built not on a transaction, but on a promise. She didn't hesitate. She stepped forward into his open arms and whispered the word that would change everything. Yes. Chapter 9. A New Foundation. Sunset Cliffs was bathed in the warm, golden light of a perfect San Diego evening. This was no society wedding. There were no hundreds of guests, no ostentatious displays of wealth. The guest list was small, filled with a few of Kyle's most trusted colleagues and a handful of Melody's friends from her old life. The arch overlooking the Pacific was decorated not with exotic flowers, but with fragrant blooms from Melody's own container garden and vibrant local wildflowers. Junie, beaming with importance, scattered petals along the sandy path, her small hand firmly clutching the rings. Kael stood waiting, his usual reserve replaced by a look of quiet, profound joy. When Melody walked toward him, she didn't wear a designer gown, but a simple, elegant dress that made her feel like herself. She carried a bouquet of rosemary and lavender, the sense of her new beginning. Their vows were not read from a script. They were promises spoken from the heart, of partnership, of trust, of building a life together, not out of necessity, but out of love. When they were pronounced husband and wife, their kiss was filled with all the passion and promise that had grown between them, sealing a bond that was now real in every sense of the word. The celebration that followed was a lively, joyful party on the beach, filled with laughter, music, and the sound of the waves. It was a world away from the sterile galas they had once endured. It was genuine. It was theirs. We hope you're enjoying this beautiful conclusion to Melody and Kael's story. If this tale of love and partnership has touched your heart, please support our channel by liking this video and subscribing to the Worthington Chronicles for more complete romance stories. Of course, here is the continuation, providing a final, heartwarming conclusion to the story. Epilogue. 2 years later. The grand reopening of the Salty Anchor was in full swing, but the real celebration was happening at a reserved table on the deck. Marty, the old cook, had finally realized his dream of owning the place, with Kael as a silent partner. The familiar scent of frying fish and the crash of the waves were a sweet homecoming. But for Melody, the true marker of how far they'd come was back at the nursery. Vesper's verdancy had expanded, and its success had allowed them to start a community program, teaching local children how to garden. Junie, now 8, was their star junior instructor. As the sun began to set over the Pacific, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink, Kael took his wife's hand. They stood at the railing, the very spot where he had first proposed his cold business deal. "It started right here," he said softly, his voice filled with a warmth that had once been absent. Melody smiled, squeezing his hand. "And now it's our favorite place." He turned to her, his expression serious and full of love. "It's more than that. It's a reminder that the best things in life aren't planned. They're built. We built this, Melody, our family, our life, together." I leaned her head against his shoulder, watching their friends and family laugh and celebrate around them. The contract was a forgotten piece of paper in a safe. The money was a tool they used to help others. All that remained was the love that had grown, against all odds, from a simple proposition into an unshakable foundation. Their story was no longer about a sunset clause, but about a love that would last a lifetime. Thank you for joining us for The Sunset Clause. If this story brought a little warmth and hope into your day, please let us know by liking this video and subscribing to the Worthington Chronicles. We love hearing from our viewers around the world. Tell us where you're watching from in the comments below. Your support helps us continue telling stories about love, family, and second chances.